On Mark's and this gentleman's question earlier concerning the issue of limited use versus conditional use, you talked about higher poles being authorized for limited use simply because they were higher poles and then meeting the community standard. But isn't merely the more obtrusive antennas and, as Mark pointed out, the much more intrusive equipment, some of which don't even fit inside the poles, a reason that those would fall under conditional use? My other question is, how would the county executive ZTA impact FiberNet and the Ultra Montgomery programs and their opportunities to engage with the industry?
So let me take the last one first. So FiberNet is the county's communications network. It's roughly 650 miles of fiber, and it connects all of our schools, county buildings, HOC buildings, Montgomery College, and we use that for almost all the communications that happen in the county. In most cases, for these changes, there's very little impact to FiberNet for them. One thing is that when we built out FiberNet, we started it in the early 90s, and it was in part with our transportation department because they needed to put up fiber for traffic cameras at the signals and for traffic signaling. So we don't have a lot of spare fiber capacity. When we first built it out, we put in 24 strands of fiber, and people thought, oh, you're never going to use that much. Now people routinely, now we build 216 count, the industry builds over 400. We don't have a lot of spare capacity to provide to these providers, and these providers are looking for, in some of these cases, dark fiber to connect some of these poles, and we don't really have much of that. On the Ultra Montgomery program, that program, which I run, is designed to support and ensure that all the businesses that we have in the county have access to as much reliable, high-speed broadband services as they need. The fact that we can make broadband available to more businesses and that we can ensure that as we have more businesses with telecommuters, that they have better service, that's generally good for the county in attracting a new workforce, but there really isn't any other financial or other component. It's simply that it's in line with the idea that the county wants to continue to grow jobs in the county. And when you look at, one of the things when I started doing that program is what you start to learn is, people talk about the cloud, it's odd that there's so much of, and you probably have the same thing in your daily life, there's so much of what people do that depends on having access to the internet. And the odd thing I found for a lot of companies is it's their communications network. So all of their files, their Rolodex of clients, those don't exist in their office. They sit at a data center or someplace else. We have companies like AstraZeneca and other folks in the county who they don't have a meeting with 12 of their salespeople sitting around the table. They're using video conferencing and other things like that. So to the extent that the county remains at the, and I'll tell you, in the DC area, what we compete against is the district in Arlington, I would say for the most part. As you age out a little bit and you start to have kids, I think we compete more against Fairfax. So the more amenities, there's a reason why we sort of looked at those things is a positive. On the other piece of the size, and the size and the conditional use, what we're trying to do is, let me show you a slide here. Okay. Here. This is showing you the 13 states that enacted legislation in the past 2 years to preempt local government siting of towers. They The two that you see in yellow, in Ohio, it was overturned because it was part of a pet shop bill, and they said it violated the single subject. And in California, it's passed both houses, but the governor has until October 15th to decide whether or not he wants to sign that or veto it. The part of what we're looking to do is to create a local solution that manages the process so that we do not have legislation that comes, and these legislation, I will say, they vary. Colorado's is a lot better than Texas. But what you'll see is that they typically come in and say, well, you can't say no.
They're suing in Texas.
I'm sorry?
They're suing in Texas
They're
now.
suing
You know,
Texas.
Austin,
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of, I'm not saying, these are
Brownsville,
just as a showing of what is passed. But what we're trying to do is, in cases where we can say, 5 feet seems, this is what we're proposing, 5 feet seems reasonable. Using existing structures and not adding more poles seems reasonable. And by doing that, we would carve out and say, but if you're going to put in something new, there should be a public hearing process. There should be greater scrutiny put on that. If you're putting in towers that are much taller, that are subject to the conditional use, those should continue to do it. Okay, one question up front and then one question in the back, and then we'll try to speed through here.
Thank you. My name is Kate Keel. I had a few comments and then questions, and it's sort of not as organized as I'd like to be. The first thing is you talk about the committee here recognizes that EMS could be hazardous, could be a problem for health. And then you had the third fact, which is that we cannot stop the telecom. We cannot, as a community, stop it. So my question is, we're kind of accepting the landscape that industry gives us. They say there's a demand, a public demand for more data. But that's a premise that is not necessarily true. The public doesn't even know what these data demands are going to be. They don't know that these data demands are sensors, are robots, are connecting every single thing from plant waters to pills to rectal thermometers to diapers. The public doesn't know that that's what the infrastructure is being put in for. The data that will be generated from this kind of garbage. The public hasn't been consulted whether we want driverless cars that can be hacked. The public hasn't been consulted whether they don't know that all of these things that are going to generate data are going to be collecting data on us that will be used for targeted marketing, will be used for surveillance and law enforcement. And they will have 24/7 perfect life log of us. So my question, also the public generally doesn't know of the health hazards of wireless radiation. 190 scientists just signed a moratorium, an appeal to the European Union asking for a moratorium on 5G. So if the public doesn't know, and then industry is buying off our legislators, and industry is coming in, with marketing tools and, putting them in front of people with half information and just letting people drool like a baby in a toy store, then we're going to get different things. So my question may be, should this committee not be asking how do we want to be ranked, but instead, should they be asking, what can we do to educate the people of Montgomery County to understand the full implications of their data and their health so that they can make an informed decision? Also, given these three facts, fact one and fact three, there really is another way of working around this. acknowledging both of those, which is to re-educate the public and have a kind of a different, the vast majority of communications and internet be wired, fiber. So anytime you're in an office, anytime you're at home, you have a wired connection to the internet. You can use Wi-Fi if you want or not, whatever, but it's wired, fiber to your home, cable to your home. And then we would need these cell towers for far less. You know, if people would use their cell phones for texting a little, you know, I'll be there in 2 hours. I'm running a little late. But the vast majority, if they want to watch a movie, they don't need to be walking down the street. It's not good for the kids. It's not good for our brains. It's not good for society. It's not good the amount of e-waste this is going to generate. So we need to sort of become a more informed public so that industry isn't dictating our future and the future of the planet.
Thank you. I think that on the issue about understanding data privacy, what happens when you use those things, that is a fair point. There are a lot of organizations, and there is a lot more from a consumer standpoint of having people understand, and understanding that if you're using the GPS on your phone, what's my ability to simply say, if you can go look on Google Maps, it'll say this is all the places that you went. So I think that's a fair point for people to understand when you use technology, what are the implications of that. On the point about the health effects, again, on that piece of it, the county executive has said that the Congress designated the FCC to be the body that addresses that. The FCC itself has said we're not the experts on it, and the experts that would consult are largely in this county. That is why the county executive has essentially said it doesn't matter that it's hard, it's your job. It's your job to actually, Congress put you and made you responsible for it. The GAO came and said you need to update your standards. The FCC opened a proceeding. And, for an agency that's looking at the fact that we may take 90 days and suggest that it should be down to 60 days, I would say, well, we have a thing that's sitting out there for 4 years. And I agree with you that it creates a distrust in our government institutions when you don't do your job. Okay, a question in the back, and then I got a question over here, one in the back over here.
Hello, my name is Paul. I'm a resident of Germantown, Maryland. I just had a RF question for the gentleman from Crown Communications and one for the county lawyer. So the tower photos that you show, those monopoles, ones that are 14 feet above the ground, the ones that tall black canisters, can you guys tell me how much RF energy emits out of those, typically? 10 watts, 25, 50, depending on the radius it transmits?
Yeah, let me grab, actually, I can stand up and...
Normal small cell architecture is somewhere between 5 and 40 watts.
5 to 40?
5 to 40 watts. Okay. All right.
Just missing one other point is the antennas that you see on a normal macro also have much higher gain compared to these antennas. Similar to the antennas like in your house that boost like a Wi-Fi signal or your television. So when you look up at a tower, it may not look like it, but a lot of those antennas are 9, 10, 12 feet tall. And they have very, very high gain. These antennas are 2 to 4 feet. So that's why we say it's somewhere between 5 and 40 watts with some gain on the antenna, but nowhere near the power that you would see from a macro tower.
Could you tell folks what that is? I mean,
What is?
What is the, so you said 5 to 40 for a small cell. What's the output of a macro tower? Because I think it's the one thing that we haven't talked about, that there are benefits of going to micros, small cells, even if RF is an issue for you.
So most macro base stations are somewhere between, they start at 40 and then you go up to 90 watts. If you get into AM, FM, it could be a kilowatt transmitter, depends. Because you go to AM, broadcast, FM, digital television. I mean, there's a lot of RF sources that are out there that aren't just for communications, well, cellular communication. Again, I can't speak on the exact macros. I don't know if CTC, if you guys have some specifications so that it can deploy here on the gains of those kind of antennas. But what I will say, and the best way to kind of describe that is when we talk about this kind of power, what kind of power you get out of these systems, right?
Out of your antennas.
So, in a traditional environment, and we'll talk about bars for a second, right? So when you have 5 bars on your cell phone, normally that's -30 dBm. I'm not going to try to teach dBm to watts and convert everything. But how that translates is the RF power that you're receiving at about 5 bars full service is 0.000001 watt. As you move further away from the tower, maybe you drop down to 1 bar, or you're in an area of poor coverage. And say it's -100 dBm. So each 10 is 10-fold less, right? So that's point, followed by 10 zeros, 3 other zeros, a 1 watt. Very, very low power. It's a two-way street, right? So your mobile has to communicate back with these towers. And one thing that the small cell does that is an advantage is increases the quality of that signal and that line of communication between your mobile. So when you have poor coverage or a quality issue, your phone that you're using has to power up also up to ½ a watt, transmitting right from your phone. I know it's counterintuitive, but the better your signal is, and the better quality signal that you have on your phone, the less emissions you get from an RF perspective, because it is a two-way street. If you are using mobile devices, even if in a poor coverage area or in a good coverage area, the majority of exposure comes from the unit you have on your person than any tower or small cell that's being installed.
Okay,
That's only half the
the
story.
Is that kind of answer your question?
That's misleading.
Hi, my name is Robert Janku. Although I guess the whole thing, but put the boxes on these poles, you put them underground, and that would improve the aesthetics.
So the issue on the underground for putting the boxes underground is twofold. One is,
One of the industry knows what the issue is.
sure, Rich,
Plus one.
So in general, all of the pieces of equipment that we're deploying on the towers have to be cooled. They actually generate heat as they operate. And in order to keep that equipment cool, it has to be exposed either to an ambient air, just the air around the environment, or it has to be cooled via fans. To underground equipment, we would need, number one, a very large space to be able to accommodate the equipment and the airflow necessary to keep that equipment cool. There's also the added element that we have to have air intake and exhaust through an underground system. So then, when you're putting those underground, you have the potential for water infiltration, which is an enemy to this type of equipment. So it does create challenges in arid environments. Arizona, Southern California, there have actually been deployments where the equipment has been placed underground, but it's not necessarily a solution in environments where we have a lot of rainfall or like Montgomery County where we could potentially have a lot of snow.